Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the DG Hamblin Show. I am DG Hamblin. Well, we have a not guilty verdict in the Daniel Penny case up in New York City, and I am grateful. I think it's quite a surprise to the prosecutor, perhaps the media, and a lot of other people. The jury was hung on the more serious charge of manslaughter. And the way that it works there is a little different than here in Georgia, where I spent the entirety of my law enforcement career. Here you have lesser included charges, so you typically do not file those together. And if you find he's not guilty of manslaughter, the jury can automatically then find guilty on the lesser included charge of. But not there. There they charged with both. And it appears that the prosecutor, or I suppose we should call him the persecutor, because he has persecuted Daniel Penny from the get-go on this case. It seems pretty clear to me that he was trying to stack the deck unfairly against Daniel Penny. And that's not the way that our justice system is supposed to work. It is supposed to favor the defendant. And why is that? Well, it's better to have a few who may be guilty set free and found not guilty than it is to have an innocent person convicted and wrongfully sent to prison. But again, the persecutor didn't see it that way. He wanted to stack the deck. So he had charged him with both manslaughter and negligent homicide. Now, the way the jury was charged, they could not find guilty on the negligent homicide if they could not find him guilty on that charge if he was found not guilty on the manslaughter. So not guilty on manslaughter, they couldn't consider the other. So the judge agreed and allowed the persecutor's motion to go through to dismiss the more serious charge when the jury was hung. And it appears that perhaps this was the persecutor's plan all along, trying to get like a negotiated plea deal, stack the deck against the defendant, a man who, in my opinion, did nothing wrong. He was defending others. He was doing what he had been trained to do. He was doing what his moral character compelled him to do, to defend those who are innocent from those who would unjustly harm them. And the person who was trying to harm others in this case was Jordan Neely. It's terrible that Mr. Neely passed away. I feel bad for his family. The man was high on synthetic marijuana, which sounds pretty innocuous. I think the street name for what he was on, they called it K2 or something like that. That's a common name which I had heard in my career. And I spent a number of years during my career as a narcotics investigator, and I had some specialized training on synthetics, such as synthetic marijuana, or what has been referred to what we call bath salts. They're essentially the same thing. Synthetic marijuana sounds like it's not a big deal, but they're both produced the same way. And I want to go over this so you can understand that he was not just a recreational marijuana user. This is more than that. These synthetics are produced in China. Yeah. It's almost like China's trying to destroy us from the inside out or something. So it's produced in China in labs which are basically run by the government there. Then it's shipped here to the U.S., where criminal organizations who have bought it, they'll take it and they will spray it on bath salts. That's one way that people ingest it, with bath salts. The other thing they'll do is they'll take it and they will spray it on typically on catnip. And catnip is probably the closest thing to marijuana as far as the way that it looks. In fact, catnip will test positive on a Fast Blue B marijuana test. So, but it's the same thing. We think if bath salt's bad, synthetic marijuana, oh, well, marijuana's not that bad. Synthetic marijuana is not the same thing at all. It is not marijuana at all. It is much closer to bath salts. And you might remember some years ago, there were a couple of cases with people high on bath salts, with the same synthetic stuff coming out of China, who had attacked people. I remember one case, a guy, I think he was eating somebody's face. This stuff is terrible. These drugs are horrible. So if Jordan Neely is a victim, he's a victim of the drug trade and of these people over in China who make this stuff and send it over here. Anyway, so he's high on that and he's attacking people, and Jordan Neely, trained to be able to subdue somebody in a situation like this, took action, and he subdued the man. He did not want to kill him. When Neely became unconscious, when he stopped struggling and trying to attack people, Daniel Penny released the rear naked choke, I believe that's what he had him in, and put him in a recovery position. And Neely was still alive when law enforcement arrived on scene. Yes, it's terrible that he died. It is a greater injustice that Daniel Penny was persecuted and had to go through the arrest and the trial and the stress of possibly losing his freedom for doing what he knew was right. And I can't help but think that if the shoe was on the other foot, if the roles were reversed, if Jordan Neely had been able to get the better of Daniel Penny and had killed him, would we have seen the same level of persecution against Neely that we saw against Daniel Penny? And I believe that we would not have seen it. I believe that Neely would have been released without having to post any bond, and would have been given a sweetheart of a plea deal with no prison time and allowed to go. Our justice system in New York City is corrupt. It is horrible. They are trying to go after the wrong people. Those who should be allowed to go home. Those about whom we should say, good job. We're really sorry that this man died, but thank you for saving others. They're the ones they're trying to throw in prison. Well, not guilty. And I can't help but think that the jury saw right through the persecutor's plan and went, you know what? If they're trying to stack the deck against this guy, they must know that they shouldn't have charged him to begin with. And this whole thing is political. And so they did the right thing, despite the protests outside. And they're protesting right now. Despite the protesters and their threats and their chants and the chaos that they want to throw about, they want to create, they did the right thing. Now, going forward, I feel bad for Daniel Penny. Brother, you need a place to stay to get away from New York City? You come here. I'll tell you what, where I live, my neighbors and I, nobody will be able to get to you. Got a place you can fish, you can hunt, we'll hang out, I'll buy you lunch. Hell, I'll feed you, excuse my language, I'm sorry. I'll feed you while you're here, man. You can just relax and chill, and we'll have a good time. Daniel Penny, brother, thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for your service to those who you saved that day. To Jordan Ely's family, I am truly sorry. I know you're heartbroken. This is not Daniel Penny's fault. Thank you for listening to me ramble for a minute. I love y'all. I'll see you next time.